But this is the final version of the Lunging Flamequake build. We've been blasting since yesterday. Got to Torment 4, day 1. With this build, it basically carried me all the way into all of the endgame content that I wanted to do in tier. We did bosses, a little slow because glyphs are still getting brought up. Aspects are not quite there. Once we get finalized, the Lunging Quake build will actually be able to do pretty much anything in the game whatsoever. I never got to push pits with it, but I'm going to give you the final version right now. We'll break down exactly what it is. You can build on this if you want to. I will have a full planner right here that's going to be in the description of the video for you. It is a full written guide, has everything. Now, there are a couple variants because this is a leveling build. You can do this from level 1. You're going to have your first couple variants here of your leveling progression, the endgame version here, and then all of the changes that I made on the live server. I've been updating it as I go, so you can follow along with this, but make sure you slide over because a lot of people have missed this all. The very bottom here, you're going to be able to see all of the lists of the uniques that I've been able to find and put on. I haven't done anything outside of what I've done, so follow along with the planner if you want to keep up with this, but this is definitely going to be probably the final version that I've done for the Lunging Quake build. The only reason that I didn't switch to anything else earlier was I was waiting on some runes. I got the runes. I'm going to swap. The rune requirements for this build are all blue. You don't need anything else above that. Now, I did find a couple, and I'll show you what I've been using and kind of what the combinations are outside of what's going to be in the planner. Lots of room for growth in this build. So we're just going to start with the gear, and then we'll kind of go down the list, and we'll go over the skills and a little bit about the Paragon board and all of the stuff that I've tried and tested. I was able to find myself the Ugly Bastard helmet. I found a really good one. Now, if you can kill bosses on Torment 1, you go straight to Gregoire. It doesn't matter if it is 750 or not. Find an Ugly Bastard helmet and put it on. The damage multiplier that you get on the bottom of this is absolutely huge, and there's really no other source of gear that you can get that will give you this big of a boost of damage. There are aspects like the Executioner aspect, but that has to grow as you get your character set up. So this right here, go to Gregoire, find a 750 piece of gear that is perfectly fine, and put that on. On the chest piece, we're running Steadfast Berserker. This is incredibly important because it's going to give us Fortify whenever we're berserking. So whenever we deal damage while we're berserking, we're going to gain Fortify. That plays right into our boss powers. And as you can see, I have a barrier on. Normally, with a barrier, Barbarians can't get that. We're getting that because we're generating Fortify using one of our boss powers, which we'll get into a little bit later. So that's super important. As you're getting your character brought up, right? This is not an endgame build. This is just going to be a get you to Torment 4 and start farming. Any stats that you can get that are going to give you anything that max life, strength, always a great base. I don't even need the iron skin on here, but this was the only piece of gear that I found, so that's perfectly fine. I ran with total armor to make sure that I'm armor capped. You want to be able to survive, so go with anything that is going to be above and beyond getting yourself to cap. For my resistances here, they're still a little low, but even though they're a little low, I'm still able to survive in Torment 4 just fine. Some of the bosses are a little tough, but once you get maybe a GA here, we upgrade our diamonds. The game is a progression, so we're in the very early stages of that progression. For the gloves, this is where I'm running Executioner. This is a gigantic modifier. This is not even maxed out. This is based on your strength. They did cap this at 200. This was uncapped previously. Either way, I went from doing about 6 million damage to 20 million damage just simply by putting this on, and it was only at 100%. So this is really, really strong. So you want to make sure that you're trying to look for the Executioner aspect. It can only be found from drops. Again, with the affixes here, I want damage to close because damage to close plays into my Paragon board, but that was really the only thing on here. All of the rest of them was just whatever I could find, whatever GA I found. So as you're building your characters, don't focus right away on just getting the perfect aspects or the perfect affixes. Put on whatever you find that's going to be the best option for you. I was able to find this. This just dropped randomly. Ariat's Bearing makes a really big difference in the cooldown of your Call of the Ancients. My Call of the Ancients is at 9.5. The way that this works, you can only have 75% cooldown reduction, which means that you can drop it off. You don't have to have it on any of your other pieces of gear. I have more Call of the Ancients cooldown reduction here. If I put it onto my amulet, I still have 9.5%. So don't waste it putting everything that you can have into your Call of the Ancients cooldown reduction, because you cannot go past that 75%. So that's why we made sure that I found this, and then as I'm getting my master working up, I'm going to not want to put anything else into the master working grids. This is also a really great source of resistances. If this was a GA, I probably would be capped. So that's something you can also look for as you're going through, you're building up your builds. Boots, Ghost Walkers, it's pretty simple, it's pretty easy. The unhindered part of this, whenever you become unstoppable, you can just move right through monsters. That is really, really good. Movement speed is life, and I use this for armor, but I can actually re-roll that armor because, as you see, I am way over cap. Inside of each of the planners I do have a spot that's going to tell you exactly what the caps are that you're going to need to get to. So you just make sure you go through and you look at that if you're wondering what any of the caps are that you're looking for. And I'll keep those planners as up-to-date as I possibly can. Aspect of Earthquakes. Again, this is a Quake build. I know that everybody said that Earthquakes was going to be dead because of all the nerfs. It's not. It's very strong still, and it still will get you to the content that you want to be able to do to get yourself farming. The Earthquake aspect, even if we're not using Ground Stomp, you're still going to gain the increased damage while you're standing inside of an Earthquake and outside of that Earthquake. The Earthquake damage is also going to deal 112% increased damage here. So you gain 2 different modifiers. You put that on the two-handed weapon, so it doubles that bonus. So it's a really big one here. Really big tempers, heavy hitter, and then damage while berserking. Those are very, very important. I will absolutely have to re-roll the primary resources to give myself some more damage here. But again, you're going to find whatever you can use at these levels here. Then for the other ones, we're going to be running elements, heavy hitter again, and then damage to close. Damage to close plays into the Paragon board, then also damage while berserking, as you saw in the other one, does too. Heavy hitters, huge multipliers to your Earthquake damage, and we'll show you that when we get into the tree. Vehement's Brawler here, that's going to give you extra damage whenever you cast your ultimate skill. And then the +2 ranks is how you get down to that 9.5 second cooldown. If I take this off here, it goes up to 10.25. The only way after 75% cooldown reduction on your ultimate skills or on any skill is to increase the rank. If the rank reduces the cooldown, then you'll get to see that cooldown reduction go down. Tempers, same thing. Damage while berserking, we're alternating back and forth, because especially in the very beginning, you don't have the Paragon board set up. You don't have the glyph levels to make up for not having the stats on your items. As you transition into your endgame builds, those will change, but for now, damage while berserking and damage to close. It ranks to heavy hitter, perfect. Aspect of Incendiary Fissures. This is going to give your Earthquakes a huge increase to damage, and then it's also going to convert it into fire damage. If you've gone and got yourself the Ugly Bastard helmet, that's going to make your Earthquakes directly interact, which no matter what, we have fire damage. So now their fire damage is getting converted right here by the Ugly Bastard helmet and getting gigantic multipliers. So this is an incredibly important one as well. My chance to cast Earthquakes twice was actually a rare. I hadn't found the legendary version of it yet, so it's still a little low. Once that gets moved up, then you're going to have a much higher chance to cast Earthquakes twice. So one of your two-handed weapons, you want to do chance to cast Earthquakes twice. The other one is going to be ranks to heavy hitter. Then again, damage to close. For the other affixes across all of your weapons is going to be strength, max life, critical strike chance. That's basically what it's going to be. For the rings here, we're going to be running Bold Chieftain. And I got really, really lucky with this. I found a GA unlucky hit chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. This is where all of my vulnerable damage is coming from. There are ways to make enemies vulnerable through your runes if you don't have this, but I was able to swap out of the rune setup that I had simply by using this ring. The Opal Vendor is great this season, so what I would highly suggest, just roll rings, try and find something with this GA, make your enemies vulnerable. It's going to change the way that you can set up your classes. For the other affixes, they're definitely not optimal, but again, we're setting up our characters. Warcry cooldown reduction because you don't need to reduce the cooldown of your ultimates. And then the damage while berserking because we're playing into our Paragon board. Conceded, because we're going to be running our boss power that's giving us our barrier. Conceded is going to give us a damage multiplier while we have the barrier up. I have the Call of Ancients cooldown reduction on here because I didn't have the pants when I had them. So I can actually re-roll this or find another ring that's going to be able to go to Warcry cooldown. Then I can get another damage multiplier, but obviously, as you can see, this ring is completely bricked. And we're still flying through Torment for content. So it still works. This build definitely carries. You can see the video, and I'll have it in the description of this video. The clear that got me into Torment 4, all of my masterworking, except for one piece of gear, was at level 4. I had negative resistances, and we were still able to move through it because of how strong this build is. Then we're going to be running Bull Kathos. Now, we don't have leap on the bar, but that's not the important part about this. When you're standing inside of any of your earthquakes, you gain 30% damage reduction. That is a huge amount of damage reduction while you're standing inside of those earthquakes. I went with damage to close, the movement speed here. I got the GA for strength, some extra armor, which is super helpful, especially as you're getting your character set up. Once your character is your endgame gear, you have your mythic unique set up, you have all of the uniques you want, you can get rid of the armor. Then the lucky hit chance, I can just reroll for something else, maybe some movement speed, because with any of these builds, especially if you're going to start farming, you want speed. So that's going to be the setup for the gear. Now, the expertise here, we're going to be running the two-handed axe. That's going to be giving us a 10% increase to vulnerable damage, no matter what. As long as the enemies are vulnerable, you don't even have to have a two-handed axe on. You can run any weapon. Preferably, you want to run either a sword or a polearms. We're going to be running a dual wield setup for Lunging Strike, so you can just use really whatever one you want as your slashing weapon. They're just a stat. Polearm or the sword is going to be the best option for you there. For your skill tree here, we're going to go just quickly through this. You can follow along with the planner if you want, but we're going to be coming up into the most important ones. This is going to give us berserking. So the great part about this is that you will always have berserking because Lunging Strike is going to give you berserking. We're going to have relatively high critical strike chance with the way that the boss's powers are set up. And Lunging Strike can also overpower, so can Ground Stomp. So we're going to gain some additional damage every time that we overpower. Ground Stomp is actually going to come up through Strategic Ground Stomp. The reason that we're doing this, if we hit 2 or more enemies with Ground Stomp, it instantly cools down our Call of the Ancients. It's really important because Call of the Ancients actually does a ton of damage. We're going to take our traditional increases to life and our damage reductions, and we're going to be getting additional sources of Fortify from Rallying Cry. We don't need any Fury generation whatsoever, so we don't need to take Tactical Rallying Cry. This is going to be a source of bleed, so we definitely want to take the Outburst Tough as Nails combination. We're running Challenging Shout because we have enough room on the bar. If you want to get out of it because you feel tanky enough, you absolutely can, but I didn't really find a time where, especially trying to push into the Torment tiers, where I didn't want to have it on. Belligerence is going to give us some additional damage while we're using Lunging Strike because it's a basic skill. Warcry, we put 4 points into here. If you wanted to take points out of this here, you can. And then you can put it right into this. We're going to go into Booming Voice for additional shout duration, some additional damage reduction from anybody affected by your shouts. The big 3 here, we're always taking these 3 here for some additional damage reduction. Same thing down here, damage and damage reduction. We talked about Call of the Ancients. This gives us attack speed, which is great for Lunging Strike because you want to attack as very fast as you can to spawn as many earthquakes as you can. Duelist is going to give us our additional attack speed to the one-handed weapons, which is what we're going to have set up for your Lunging Strike as it is. This is your heavy hitter here. This is what we were talking about. This is why you put it on your tempers. 225% increased damage. The more heavy hitter you can get, the better. And then we're going to be going into Unconstrained here. This is just going to make our Berserking bonus additional. So it goes normally at 25%. It's going to go up to 60%. And then when we're below 65% life, we gain some physical damage reduction. For the Paragon board here, I barely have it even set up right now. I'm going to be running Martial. This is going to help get back to having Ground Stomp cooldown and your Call of the Ancients, because that's some big damage there. Weapon Master is only being used because we get an additional 30% increased damage to injured and healthy enemies. We're going to be running Ire. This is going to help give us our damage while berserking bonus. And the reason that we want damage while berserking bonus is because we're going to be running a legendary node later on that plays off of that and gives us a multiplier. The next board is going to be Decimator. We can overpower with Lunging Strike and with Ground Stomp. So what that's going to do is that every time that we make an enemy vulnerable, we're going to do 20% damage, and then when we overpower, we gain an additional 20% bonus. Challenger, this is going to just give us some multipliers, and then the more strength that we put into it, strength plays into our executioner aspect, as you saw. So the more strength that we put in, we actually get an increase to those normal nodes. Normally this is 5. Challenger increases our normal nodes, and we're going to get some extra damage to it. This is the node that's going to be increased by your damage while berserking bonus. That's why we're running Ire. This is going to give us an additional 45% increased damage based on our damage while berserking bonus. It's 10% of it. So we need at least 450, and I'll have that in the planner. So remember, go check the planner and make sure that you're using the correct variant. So the variant for the live server right here is at the very end. This is going to be the version that we're running, so make sure that you check that out. And then that's going to have all of your caps in it. We'll have that updated for you so that you can see exactly what the damage while berserking bonus is and what the close bonus is that you're going to. And for the final board, that's where we're also going to be running where your close is here. That is currently capped for me. We want to be running Rumble because this is going to be super important for doing damage to your earthquakes. We can get up to a 15x multiplier as long as we have damage out when we're damaging a boss or crowd control enemies. So we're up to 15% here. And then it also gives you a multiplier with the legendary bonus to your earthquakes. We're going to be running Revenge in this board. The reason that we're running Revenge here, Revenge is going to increase this damage. This, if I have enough willpower, which later on, as we get into our builds and we get our builds set up, we will have enough willpower for this. That will give you 100% increased damage to close. The Force of Nature board, now I can start taking damage to close off of my weapons and put things like critical strike damage on. So as your builds come online, you have to change around your stats. So it's not static. You can look at a planner, and that planner will give you one thing, but based on where your character is at, you're going to have to change things up and move things around. So every character is different. So use them as guides. Don't use them as this is a set in stone thing, and it should be exactly like that. So I finally maxed this out. Now I can start changing around. Looking at the rune combination that we're going to be running. For the rune combination, we're going to be running Cur Cry. This is actually an option for you. Most of what I was running, let me grab the rune for you. You can see it. Most of what I was running with this, I was actually running the Cax rune. Now, if you can't find that, another great combination for you is going to be the F rune. That's going to summon your wolves. The reason that you want to run wolves, if you don't have the aspect or the affix on your ring that makes enemies vulnerable, the wolves that will be summoned will make your enemies vulnerable. Huge. They also freeze and they stun. What Cax is going to do, Cax will actually drop all of your primary resources, then increases your damage by 100%. We don't need to worry about gaining resources because we're going to be using Lunging Strike, which is a generator. So we're constantly refilling and then spending, and refilling and then spending, and increasing our damage. So if you can find yourself a Cax rune, that's going to be replaced over here with the Cur Cry, or you run Cur Ka. That's all going to be in the planner, so make sure you follow along with that planner. So that's going to be your rune combination for one of your weapons. Now make sure you put them in the weapons. Don't put them in your armor. The strength from the gems is going to be way stronger than adding these to your armor. Then this is the one that will make this build come online. You can't run this without this, unfortunately. It's going to be Mani Tech. Every time you cast 2 mobility skills, which Lunging Strike is a mobility skill, then it's going to cast Earthquake. And now if you have a chance to cast Earthquakes twice, it's going to cast 2 of them. So you're going to want to make sure that you use Mani Tech. That's really the only way to get this to work. For your boss powers, we're going to be running Lord Seers. So Lord Seer is going to put down some pools of blood. That's going to deal some bleeding damage to the enemies. We're going to be running Harbinger of Hatred's Volley. This is going to be used because every time that we cast a basic skill, while at maximum resources. It's going to spend those resources, which we're using generators. So we have now 2 ways of spending our resources. Activating your main boss power is going to grant the 24x. We don't really need that first part, but whenever we activate our main boss power, which is going to be Lord Zir, we're going to get an additional 24% increased damage, vulnerable damage. So that's very, very strong. Hatreds embraces hate. This is going to give us increased critical strike damage. This is one that's going to come off later on once we don't have the need for the additional critical strike. This is where we're getting all of our barrier from. Whenever we generate the fortify, that gives us 22% as barrier. That's how I have a barrier up all the time. It's very, very helpful, very tanky. It really makes the build run. So that's really what it is. And your gameplay loop is simply just, we'll add multiple training dummies here so you can see what the gameplay loop looks like when you're pulling attacks. You just hold down your lunging strike. You're going to start by using your Call of the Ancients. Then you're going to ground stomp. Call of the Ancients is going to come right back up. Then you can use your shouts to cool down your Call of the Ancients, and you can cool down your ground stomp. Then they're going to come back up. So we're going to use Call of the Ancients again. We're going to use a ground stomp, Call of the Ancients, use your shouts again, and now Call of the Ancients is coming back up again. So that's going to simply be it. That's your gameplay loop. Hold down the lunging strike. Super fun, super fast, very, very easy to get into. No fury management whatsoever. And again, make sure you follow along in the planner. I have kept it up to date 100%. We just go right into your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 variants. So make sure you slide over to the very end, go into that variant. It's very, very easy to miss. But that's it. Hope that you enjoy the build. I'm live every night. I'd love it if you stopped by, said hi, theory crafted with me. Catch you on the clip side.